never seen something like me.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Walking with Wolfinch, another rainy episode. I'm here today with Natalia Shvarts, who is a franchise lawyer, but in my opinion, one of the key voices in franchising in the UK.
Thank you
for joining us today.
My absolute pleasure.
How are you?
I'm great. I mean, what a week to be in London.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots happening. So what are your plans this week? What's been going on and what's happening?
Well, yesterday was a secret mission we can't talk about.
We can't talk about it. Maybe by the time this is out. You know.
So today is this, which is really special. Tomorrow I've got one down day to just catch up with work.
Yeah.
And then Thursday I'll be knocking on the door of Franchise Innovation Think Tank in the hope that they might let me in. Probably not. So it'll be the Franchise Social and then Olympia, right?
Fantastic.
Olympia's Friday, Saturday.
And you're exhibiting at Olympia?
I am, yes.
Excellent.
I'm part of the legal corridor.
Yeah. Wow.
But I've got the pleasure of hosting the multi-unit conference on Friday, which is fantastic.
Wonderful.
Looking forward to that.
So Natalia, for those people that don't know who you are, can you just, 90 seconds, little snapshots as to where it all started, what you've done, and where you are now, and what the plan is?
Oh, okay, wow. So I'm a franchise solicitor. I started, I always have to count back, 17 years ago. And from day one, I specialized in franchising. So, and I think for me, sort of, doing my legal studies, etc., franchising wasn't something I ever came across or studied. So I was very much I really loved competition law. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to get into that. And then my backup plan was going to be employment. And then I ended up getting a legal secretarial job at a specialist franchise firm, and that was it. I got hooked. I loved it. I loved working with, I was really lucky. I got to work with so many brands, domestic, international, foreign franchisors coming here, UK franchisors going abroad, and just the variety of work, it's never boring.
It's never It's sort of cross-sector, but in the same sector.
This is it. It's like I got to work with a lot of different businesses, different sectors, but then they're different sizes and at different stages of development, and it's just been fascinating. And then I guess I sort of got to a point where I was sort of thinking, well, I know this now, and I'd like something slightly different. And for most lawyers, it's sort of, you either stay in a law firm and sort of, work your way up the ladder, or you go in-house. And I thought, in-house sounds really interesting. So I sort of was looking around and then went in-house with a huge franchisor.
With Home Instead,
to develop the legal functions. So.
And that was while Trevor Brockbank still in?
Yes, Trevor was there.
Super.
What
an exciting guy as well.
Absolutely. And this is it. I think I sort of got the opportunity to work with Home Instead at that moment where they were already quite large, and it's sort of going from 100 to 200.
Wow.
So it was really that, that period where you really need to get your stuff sorted and you need to get ready for that next step of growth, because going from 100 to 200 is massive and you're going to have challenges along the way. So that was great. And then, fast forward 7 years. So I sort of felt like, I got to do such interesting work with Home Instead, and I learned a lot. I was really privileged to have access to, business coaches, but also seeing how franchising works from inside out.
Which is
being part of the franchisor.
Very interesting. As a franchise lawyer, it's very different, right?
So different. And I think at that point I realized, what? I'm probably one of the few lawyers who got to do this, right? So there aren't that many others who have, that experience of knowing what it's really like on the ground
Yeah.
and sort of the inside of the franchisor and franchisee world. Because, I got to know guys, and I got to know those franchisees and their lives and what it's like for them. So I thought to be honest with you, I really missed the social element of franchising. Because before I used to, when I was in a law firm, I used to go to BFA events and franchising events. Because you go to network and to speak to existing clients, gain new clients, right? But when you're in-house, you don't go to that kind of stuff.
No.
So I missed it. I really missed it. And I thought, you know what, time to get back out there. And I just felt that with my experience that I gained, I could help more people.
Yeah.
And that was important to me, to get out there and help
And
others.
so how many years ago did you then sort of leave Homestead and start?
So I left 3 years ago now. So I then spent 2 years in another law firm in Manchester. And then I decided time to put big girl pants on and try it on my own.
And how is it going?
I love it. It's challenging at times because it's me, but I love the freedom to be able to choose who I want to work with and who I want to support.
Yes.
And I really enjoy having a balance of franchisee work and franchisor work, because I feel that keeps me, that gives me the necessary experience and keeps you honest and keeps you real.
So I really want to talk to you about franchise agreements, and it's a really weird and interesting thing because I'm out, as you know, next month to the IFA convention in Vegas, and it's a very different climate there because of the regulation. Whereas here we've got, I think, through the BFA, they do a very good job of self-regulating the market. I know that, when I first started franchising, we had an agreement, went to the BFA, they said, look, can you make X, Y, and Z changes? Which, really kind of gives you some confidence in what we've got. But what is a franchise agreement, and how is it different from a share and purchase agreement? And who's it weighed on the side of? If you're talking to a franchisee who hasn't ever been in the market before, what would you be telling them?
Yeah, good question. And to be honest, I do it quite a lot. So let's start at the beginning. So franchise agreement is the main document between the franchisor and the franchisee. Is the main contractual document which governs that relationship. And obviously that relationship is going to be, it's not a one-off deal. Like you mentioned, the sale and purchase agreement, which regulates, a one-off occurrence. Whereas a franchise agreement has to be a document that's drafted to regulate that 5 or 10 year relationship, right? So that's hard. Because you need to cater for things that may or may not happen, and also for potential resolution of situations that may or may not happen. So it needs to be sort of flexible enough, but equally it needs to be fixed enough, because the franchisee needs to have some confidence of what am I going to get, how much is it going to cost, etc. So there are all those things that you sort of need to think about. And, in terms of, when I speak to prospective franchisees, I always make it clear from the beginning, this is going to be more weighted in favor of the franchisor. And that's absolutely standard, because if you think about it, the franchisor is the one who came up with the brand, the system. They're the ones who are doing all the development, and they're looking forward into the future, etc. And it is the franchisor's job to protect the business and the network, right? So here is this franchisee coming in, and you have no idea who this person is. You are trusting that they say that they are who they are and they have this experience and they've got the cash. But you're going to be trusting them with all this know-how that you've developed. So it is absolutely fair enough that you will want to protect that information. So
I think that protection word is really correct. Certainly it resonates with me. I mean, I've been on both sides, having been a franchisee and a franchisor. The thing that I always say to people is it's, what is it that you don't want to do here? What doesn't sit right with you?
Yeah.
And really it's about us being able to protect their investment. As a guardian of the brand, to say, well, when your neighbor is doing something incorrectly, we're able to do something about it.
Exactly. And it's, I always find it fascinating how many people don't sort of talk about it that way. And I think that's exactly right. So if you are a franchisee coming in, actually the franchise agreement being restrictive in parts is in your interest as well, because that means that, it's the same for everyone. So it means that your neighbors are going to be subject to the same restrictions. So whatever, every now and then, the truth is you get sort of people who come into the network and, it doesn't work out for whatever reason, but you don't want that situation to have a knock-on effect on others. So it's important for the franchisor to maintain a certain level of quality and because franchisors are saying, look, we are the best, when you buy from us, you're getting the best. So you need to ensure that you continue delivering on that. Yeah. And if, one franchisee is not delivering on that, that needs to be nipped in the bud as quickly as possible.
So have you, thinking about the the franchise agreement and difficult franchisees, or have you been involved in a lot of those sort of processes throughout your career, because you've had such a varied sort of level of experience? I mean, what do you find are the telltale signs early doors? I mean, because I don't think being a franchisee is for everybody, and I often say this to people. I probably say no about 50% of the time myself, because I just often think, well, great, is it for you? And I'll often redirect people to consultants and so on, so maybe you should just do this independently.
Yeah.
But in your opinion, what are the telltale signs early doors that franchisors can, or even franchisees themselves think, oh gosh, yeah, I probably would do that?
Well, I think one of the probably, one of the telltale signs that's sort of is a really obvious giveaway is a franchisee who's disengaged, right? They stop turning up to things, they stop participating. And that's usually, that should be the first sort of warning sign to the franchisor, something is going on. Now, the truth is, in my experience, there's often, when franchisees get, when they sort of not lose interest, but when they get disengaged from the business, it's often not actually anything to do with the business. There's often something else going on in the background.
That's interesting. What does that sort of mean?
More often than not, it's probably something personal happening in their lives. And obviously, it gets into business life as well, right? Because, if there's something happening in your personal life, whether you like it or not, you're going to be bringing that with you. And I suppose spotting that early is an opportunity for the franchisor to kind of go, right, is there anything that we can do here to help you get over that, whatever that might be going on? And I'm not necessarily saying that the franchisor should get involved in the solution, but the franchisor can certainly sort of signpost, or once they recognize that, kind of help the franchisee see what's going on, because often they sort of don't even see that themselves necessarily. And if it can be resolved, then great. And you sort of can sometimes see franchisees, something is happening, it's not great, but you caught it early, you're able to help somehow, and they come back. And then they carry on growing and everything is fine. Or if it's obvious that maybe that's the end of the road, or maybe that's going to take an extremely long time. And the point is, it's like, well, where do you go from that moment on, right? Because as a franchisee, you've got a business. And the truth is, if you're not going to be on the ball and developing it and growing it, then the value of your business is going to be dropping and dropping and dropping. Well, what's the point in that? Because you invested in this business, you need to have an exit plan. And if your business is worth less than what you paid for it, well, that doesn't work for you, because you're going to walk away with a loss, right? So it's sort of understanding and being realistic of where am I, where do I want to go, is now a good time to sell, should I get out? In which case, again, franchisor can often help, because, depending on where you are as a franchisor, you may be people knocking on your door going, hey, I want a franchise in this territory. So actually, being sort of a proactive franchisor in that sense can be helpful, because then your exiting franchisee gets out on decent terms. Even if they don't get all of their money back, they often are okay with that, because they just want to go away and deal with whatever's going on.
Better than getting nothing back.
Yeah.
I remember being a franchisee, and there was someone that probably shouldn't have been a franchisee and there's always a percentage of the network that's in that situation.
Yeah.
And I remember this gentleman, very nice guy. When I started, he was about the same business. When I finished, he was about the same business. And I throughout the years, I'd said to him as a friend, I said, look, isn't it time to just leave? You'd make more money in a job. But it's that kind of emotional, and I suppose what we probably need to do is someone to just shake him and say, it's time,
Yeah.
And it's a really difficult thing. As a franchisor, I find it really hard, because you build these, you go through this emotion with franchisees as well, because A, from my perspective, I've been there, but B, we were talking about this last night, it's an emotional thing to build a business. And when you've seen that with your franchisees, and then when you're sort of saying, you give someone the tap and say, actually, maybe it's time to call time, because you'll be left with something rather than nothing if it's going downhill. And it's a really difficult thing. And I don't know whether, as franchisors, we say it enough, often enough, early enough. And it's, normalizing that, I think, is such an important piece. But the question that springs to my mind is, what do you think, as a network, is there a percentage of the network that should be on that kind of resale market at any one time, or is on average on the resale market at any one time, with this reason or others?
Well, we sort of talk, within the industry, we often talk that, once you are an established franchisor with a mature network, that you should be expecting about a 10% churn in your network.
Yeah.
So I would say, 10% is about an average.
About average, about right.
Yeah.
And that feels, sensible, I think, for any size network. I think if you're having sort of difficult conversations, and sometimes even, when I sold, it was a wonderful conversation. Actually, I was like, great, it's time for the next exciting journey, and you've built something, you realize the assets, and crystallize that profit and move on. And it's a really exciting thing as well, I think. I don't think, and actually maybe it's a UK thing, maybe we don't really build businesses to exit as much.
And we should, and because this is, and this is the thing, actually being, preparing for exit and knowing that that's on the agenda and that's going to happen, that way you can actually have a better exit, because you're planning for it. So you're going, okay, well, my plan is to exit, so I want to maximize what I'm going to get, right? And if you're going into that with that sort of attitude, then you as a seller can make sure that your foot is on the gas until that last moment, and then you're handing it over and it's not your problem anymore, right? Whereas I feel like sometimes, certainly there are so many situations where sale comes up unplanned, and the problem is, in that case, if the seller decided, I'm selling, in their head they're gone. But the process can take months.
Yeah.
So you're
finding
talking.
a buyer itself is just, it's a slow process, right?
Well, that, and then even once you've got a buyer, so much depends on, the business itself and sort of what type of sale it is and whether or not there is property and employees and all that, right? So that can take 2 or 3 months at least, at best. And if if the driver of the business has kind of gone like, in my head, I'm not there anymore, by the time you get to completion and the business is handed over, the buyer doesn't get what they expected. Yeah. And that can be really challenging for you as a franchisor, right? Because you've got this person, this new person, and they have expectations, and they're like, hey, Amrit.
Well, they came in motivated, and then it's,
what's this? So, it's really important to, and I suppose, is it your job as a franchisor? But I suppose to an extent it is. We've got to keep motivating the franchisees, the exiting franchisee.
I think it's totally our job as a franchisor. Gosh, that's making sure that everyone's engaged. I mean, we track engagement actually, and I think just making sure that everyone's engaged is so important, because without that, we're all at a loss, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think you can't move fast or well without that. And it's just staying on exits for a moment. Mm-hmm. I think it's really an interesting thing. I've exited various businesses, smaller businesses. I've been running my own shop since I was about 22, and restaurants, and then as a dom care franchisee, and really all just to kind of help build up asset to do something like what I'm doing now, because that was the kind of bigger dream. But what have you found in terms of those sort of exit questions that you tend to get? What is it that people are looking for? How can a franchisee, regardless of sector, how do they become exit ready? I appreciate you're not an accountant, but you're so involved in all aspects of it that it might be an interesting take that we get.
Yeah, well, I suppose in terms of exit ready, which way we're going?
Should we go there?
Yep. It's
under the trees.
It's about, as a selling franchisee, you can help yourself a lot if your house is in order. So it's sort of going, right, for one moment, put yourself into the shoes of a buyer, and the buyer will be asking all sorts of questions about your business. And actually, if you have organized your business, you have organized your records, if everything is, available and up to date and you're on top of things, then that's going to make everything a lot easier. And it's also sort of thinking about, I guess, things like, again, a good example would be property. I, as a lawyer, always, when I speak to prospective clients, I always ask about, is there a property involved? And in a business where there is a property, it's sort of asking very simple questions like, is the lease in the name of the company? Because you'd be surprised. I had a situation where, the lease was not in the name of the company.
Right.
So you kind of go like, oh, well, that's going to add a few weeks onto the, on the completion date, because all of that will need to be sorted. And trust me, landlords tend to be not very motivated because they've not got an interest in something happening on time, because they've got a tenant, so they're happy. And also, you've got to factor all those costs in, because the landlords, again, they're not going to incur costs, or rather they will be looking to pass those costs on to you. So, if you're a seller, you really need to look at your business and look at everything and go, right, okay, am I ready to extract myself? And then on more sort of practical level, again, it's looking at your involvement in the business and going, actually, to what extent am I involved in the business? Is it really, would it be really easy for me to sort of step away and for the buyer to step into my shoes? What does my team look like? Are we clear on roles and responsibilities? And it's looking at those sort of.
I think that's, it certainly resonates with me. I mean, one of the things we talk about at franchisee training, day one, is this: how to exit your business. And everyone sort of looks at me blankly, what the hell are you talking about? We've just bought, we haven't got a business yet. But my thinking is very much that, let's get the accounts right. Mm-hmm. Let's operate your business today as though you're selling it tomorrow.
Yep.
And then everything in 5, 10, 15 years' time will be absolutely bang on the money. And thinking about infrastructure, I think that's a really just a wonderful thing. Also, you can't run without that, can you? I mean, you can't build the business at a fast enough rate without that. And you certainly can't sell it without that. A friend of mine was looking at buying a business, and he was on the phone to me after our secret mission yesterday, and he was just sort of getting my take on it.
Yeah.
And I was just asking him about the director, the owner, and just saying, well, how involved is this person? And really kind of digging into that and asking really sort of poignant questions about that, because that kind of tells you everything. If that person can't leave the business for 3 months and it carry on, then it's probably not ready, or they need to stay in the business, which is problematic within itself, I think. So,
in the domiciliary care business, if you are the owner and you're looking to sell, but you are also the care, the care manager.
Gosh, yeah.
If you've not got those roles separate and the right people in the right seats, then the buyer coming in, unless they are trained and they can actually do that, chances are they won't.
Yeah.
You're looking for a very specific person with very specific background and experience. So the buyer is going to be in a difficult situation, because not only are they coming into the business, but they also need to recruit somebody new for one of the very, very important roles within that business. And let's face it, we all know that's pretty tough in itself.
Yeah, gosh, wow.
And that particular role tends to be one where, people tend to rotate a bit. So it's,
It's very tricky.
It's tough.
So thank you, Natalia. I just, from my experience of you, just to sort of say, is always been that you've taken such an interesting standpoint on questions. I've picked up the phone to you tons of times. Thank you for answering.
I just screen my calls.
And I've always found that you take a commercial view, but a human view.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important thing with lawyers, because the other person is also a business owner that has emotion and so on. And it's really sort of trying to figure out, well, what is the most sensible thing, rather than just getting into an arm wrestle the whole time. What's the best option for everybody?
Well, I think it's important because it's, being commercial is important, because at the end of the day, whatever is happening, whatever situation you're in, it's in everyone's interest to resolve it and get to the end goal.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not a litigator, so, especially in commercial transactions, we all have the same goal, right? We're all working towards the same outcome. So when you get, the truth is, getting really theoretical with stuff just doesn't work for anyone.
No.
You're just spending more time.
Good for lawyers, though.
See, some people, and some people think that, and I think trouble with that is you'll get clients who are pissed off, and forget the repeat business.
Yeah.
And okay, you might look at it this way and kind of go, well, it's transactional work. It's not a repeat business type of thing. What are you talking about? But to me, everything is a repeat business, because
Truly.
you never know, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I have I have worked with clients who have, sold but then bought something else, or, are doing something else, and it's recommendations. And for me, personally, getting a client who is a happy, satisfied client is the most important thing, because I want them to walk away having had a good experience and knowing that, not feeling like, lawyers, they're really expensive and a waste of time.
Well, I always feel very kind of, I feel taller having left a conversation with yourself. So thank you for that. And you know, I'm doing this slightly back to front, but I want to talk to you on a more sort of personal level as well. I mean, you've got lots happening. You're recently engaged, I think. Congratulations!
Thank you.
And a book coming out, or came out, and another one coming out, I think. And you know, I just wanted to, you know, just that. And there's the first one was all about your childhood and your relationships with your father and sister, and you know. And I thought that was really interesting. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just spending a few minutes just kind of digging into that. I mean, it's going completely off topic, but purely, you know, I just thought it was so interesting that I thought you might want to share it.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I wrote a chapter in a book collaboration, and I guess to be very honest with you, I've been wanting to write a book for a while, and because I just feel like I've had you know, my experiences, like, I've had a few different ones, and they're probably not like the most usual, you know, sort of situations.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I guess, again, my motivation for that is some of the things I've been through have been really hard.
Yeah.
Because I felt very alone in them, and I wish I just had someone that I could turn around who would say, it's okay, it's going to be fine. Or just somebody who kind of could turn around to you and say, you know, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand it, you know. So I guess I want to write about some of the things because they are maybe things we don't talk about enough.
Truly, yeah.
Or, like I say, like a big part of my life, and, you know, certainly a topic I'll be talking about in the book. Is MRKH, Mayer-Rokitansky-Kuster-Hauser syndrome, you know, which is basically a condition, a medical condition that affects one in every 5,000 women.
Right.
And so some people think it's rare, but actually 1 in 5,000 is a lot.
Rare, actually, yeah.
It's quite common in medical terms, and yet it's not something not something many people know. And essentially what it is that it's a genetic mutation. When you are a girl, according to your DNA, you know, you're made up as a girl, but you are born without a uterus, and with various other abnormalities in medical terms, which again mostly is undiagnosed until you are going through puberty.
Yeah.
And so at that very difficult time, because you're a young girl who's sort of transitioning to become a woman, and, you know, there's sort of, you know, emotional stuff happening and whatever else, and at that point you're basically told you will never be able to have children. There may be other things that might be very difficult, and so that can be quite a big shock.
That is really, I mean, how difficult? Where did you grow up?
Well, so I grew up in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Back when it was Soviet Union. It became Russia when I was 7. So I still, so that's kind of been really fascinating, sort of the communist regime.
Yeah.
And it was a different world, you know. And then I came over to the UK when I was 14. And I came on my own. So my parents still live in Russia right now, you know, 30 years on. And so I was at school. I lived in a boarding house, which again is just a very different experience, you know. You sort of not just leave your family. I left everything. I left, you know, it's a different country. I left all my friends. I left everything I knew. I mean, I loved school. And I had to learn everything in a different language. So it was, that alone was quite a big thing to go through.
You've got that with everything else that you're learning at the same time. I mean, that is...
Yeah. Although, you know, to be honest, luckily, I mean, I was very interested in maths, so maths came easy.
Right.
And, but a lot of other subjects, things that you do at GCSE level, I already new because I already covered it in Russia. So some of it was just learning it in English for the first time.
Right, okay.
Because actually I could, I already knew that. And again, I'm ashamed to say, but like I did German.
Yeah.
And I did German in Russia, so my German was much better than GCSE level.
Right.
So it felt like, I can just relax in my German class.
Hey.
So I tended to like sit in the corner and
like
write
a strategic
poetry.
approach, right? Very nice. I mean, it's very interesting, and I think it's really interesting to understand the levers that motivate people and what brought them here, because I think everyone's always got that one motivating factor. Well, very slippy shoes on today. So these are my Hampstead Heath walking ones. There you go. So,
like the sound effects.
Yeah. So and I find that really quite an intriguing thing, because there's always something, isn't there, that drives somebody, and when they're kind of sitting there thinking, if they really dug in and had those coaching therapy sessions or whatever, and you'd really sort of understand, well, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm so passionate about X, because I've been through that. And you've always struck me as such a fiercely independent person, and just very serious in a positive way, not in a you're boring at all, because you're not. We have lots of fun. Right? Come to one of the BFA mixers and you'll find out. But you've always struck me as a very sort of serious person, which is why I always really enjoy working with you. But I'm sure that must come from a lot of this history as well.
Well, I think in fairness, like I'm probably I owe a lot to my parents and to my upbringing. And that's, and also I guess, I guess I'm just made that way. I read books. I used to, flights, so flying, from London to Moscow. I would literally go and buy a new book at the airport, and by the time we landed in Moscow, I would have finished it. I loved it, and I loved learning new stuff, and I loved people, and I just find everything fascinating. And I think it's been that sort of having that hunger for learning and being open-minded, I think has a lot to there's a lot in that. And I guess Dad always sort of taught us, don't ever rest on your laurels, even if you're doing well.
Truly that immigrant story, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's then looking at like, okay, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you've got to keep that in check, because sometimes that hasn't been that helpful, because you end up sort of beating yourself up, and nothing is ever enough.
Yeah.
But I think that also helps you to look at what you're doing and go, okay, well, where do I want to go? And frankly, when things don't work out, or difficult times, you can sort of sit there and feel sorry for yourself, or you can just kind of go, right, okay, well, where's the silver lining? What can I do with this?
Let's do this thing. Let's get on.
And nothing is, rain is not forever.
Yeah.
And it always ends. And the sun will come out.
Yeah.
So you've got to look for those positives and, and work towards it.
That's very nice. Rain is not forever. That's a bit of poetry right there. It's very true, though, isn't it? And it's a very hard thing. I've got, as you know, a few young children, and my eldest daughter is 5. Beautiful. But she's very, she really thinks about things, and it's that message that I'd love to get to her. It's rain's not forever. Anything that's not quite right now can just be right. In the next breath, and I think it's that really. And I think when we're talking about entrepreneurs, it's really going in with that attitude with everything in life, isn't it? And thank you so much for today. I've really enjoyed it. I think this may have been the longest podcast that we've done, actually. So I really appreciate it. I usually end this with a question about what one tip or hack or piece of advice would you give to somebody to help them move themselves to the next stage, to that next million?
Oh, okay. I should be more prepared for this, really. I'd say keep things simple, and get the right people to help you along. What I mean by that is, I'm a big fan of keeping things simple, because I just, don't like to overcomplicate life. But coaching, having the right people who can help you to navigate and who can help you to have that clear vision at all times. Because sometimes we get too busy and we get distracted and we don't often see the path in front of us as clearly. But somebody who's coming in, who's got the right skills, but who is independent, can come into that situation and go, right, okay, and they can see it better than you.
Yes.
And if they ask the right questions, it then helps you to have that moment of clarity and actually go, this is where I'm going.
Yeah.
And that's what I need to do next. And just then break it into simple steps.
That's lovely. I think, actually, what great advice for an entrepreneur. Just keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you so much. And,
Thank you.
Until next time.
Yeah.
See you soon. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Walking with Wolfinch. Until next time, goodbye from rainy Hampstead Heath.